Okay.
Morning and welcome everybody. This is Jill Maldonado. I am with Nanu Pagan and Patty Wallenberg, and they will be discussing Imbolc today.
Thank you, Joe. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Joe.
it. Okay. Imbolc is really the celebration that's happening at this time of year. And Imbolc is really the term that's used mostly by those trained in Western traditions. So if you wouldn't mind, Patty, take it away. Teach us what Imbolc is.
Well, at least from a pagan
So,
perspective.
yeah, by all means.
So, Imbolc is what they term a cross-quarter holiday. So it is a holiday that shows up between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, and it is about it's kind of the last of the really lean times. It is the end of a hard winter. There's the very, very beginnings of spring. You get the Groundhog Day. How much longer is winter going to be? So I was reading one of my books so I could have a little bit of background. And Groundhog Day kind of stems from or originates out of divination. How long is
Yeah,
winter
it
going to
is.
be? How long before we start having food again? And I kind of remember when I was as part of a coven group, our Imbolc celebration, we had a ritual, which always cracked us up because I will tell. So we would kind of go around our circle, and the theory was that so a hungry man comes into town and he goes, knocks on everybody's door and says, "I'm hungry." And they're like, "No, no, no, I only have one potato left." Goes to another door, same thing, "I only have one carrot left. I only have one this left, one this left." So the man gets the town together and he says, "If we put all of your one items in one pot, we have enough food for all of us." And so the lesson sort of then becomes that by combining what you have, not being selfish about what you have, you are able to support the entire village, not just support yourself. And so Imbolc is kind of like that. It's about pooling together your last resources. It is the very end of a hard winter. So it's not quite spring yet. And so the weather might be getting warm once in a while and might kind of see the beginnings of spring. But for the most part, it is the timing of getting ready and hoping. It is also in the book that I was browsing, it talks about the time when the lambs start having their milk ready.
That's what I remember
So
reading.
again,
Yeah,
that's
I remember
another
reading
time
that.
of season change. It's just showing that there's light. The days have gotten longer. We're no longer getting dark really early. We're probably getting darker an hour plus later than we did at wintertime.
Right.
So it's all about survival, and it's all about the changing of seasons and honoring that you're moving from winter, which is also a very inner time for you. It's a time when there was nothing else to do but hunker inside because it was
Right.
too cold. And so now you're starting to kind of transition from any of your inner workings and traveling out towards your outer workings for the year.
That's pretty interesting because it's
Ah,
very similar to the things that I learned.
okay.
Um, you talk about, this man going from door to door. Mom used to
Mm-hmm.
tell us that story as stone soup. And
Yes,
then
stone
he
soup.
got everybody together with a rock and a big pot, and he
Mm-hmm.
poured water on there. And he said, "You know what? This would taste so much better with that one carrot you had,
Yep. Yep.
And like that, everybody would put their one piece in there and everybody
Mm-hmm.
was fed.
Correct.
I do recall the ideas of how things are coming back to life again. You see in the snowy areas, you see like little greens starting to pop out and flowers
Right.
that can actually survive the cold, and the herbs that actually grow during that time, and the way we were taught about it. If you recall, ancestrally, and much like many indigenous ways of being, or earth centered ways of being all across the planet, many of those populations had a really good relationship with the earth and with their food and with their agricultural life and their husbandry with the animals, like you mentioned, the lambs, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
There's also the movement of the reindeer. There's also the movement of our food, those who hunted bison, right? During one time of the year they were at this part, and then you had those nomadic people, or you had those that had to live until the buffalo came back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you do it?
So yeah, and then even you look at others that live their lives more sedentary. A lot of those folks had a really good relationship with the stars,
Mhm.
and so they would find themselves following calendars that they created, lunar calendars particularly. And so I understand, like right now we had the Purupecha. Those are the people from Michoacan, Mexico, and they celebrated their new year February 1st,
Mhm.
but they follow a lunar calendar.
Mhm.
We also know that I think the Chinese do that too, right? Around
Chinese New Year is, I think,
exactly,
February 12th on the new moon. So they still follow a
exactly.
lunar calendar
They
also for
follow
their
a
New
lunar
Year's.
calendar, yeah.
Hmm.
So it's kind of, it's really it's really something that when you look across cultures, there's a lot of similarities that we can actually sit down and have a conversation and know what the other one's saying.
Right. Right. It's also the festival of Bridget, or I always pronounce her Bridget, but my book says Breed. And so
Ah, okay.
she's the hearth goddess. So it's also she brings back fire, and she's about house and home. She's the goddess, shows she's a Celtic goddess, and she's the
Okay.
goddess of fire and poetry, healing, and craftsmen. And I remember in our circle sometimes we would make Bridget knots, which were 4 sticks in a T or an X, or wherever you want to do it,
Okay.
using red, black, and white yarn. And we would wrap it and make these square knots with those colors. So they must represent each of hers, or her colors and stuff. So she's very important in the Celtic
When you're
pantheon.
doing those knots, what is the purpose of those knots? Do you keep them? Do you burn them? What do you do with
Keep them
them?
for a season, keep them for the
Okay.
year, and then burn them and make new ones. But I don't have one anymore because I haven't made one in a long time. But they would be like kind of like a square, and you would wrap your yarn all the way around it. So, and I'm not entirely sure what the colors represent, but they must also stand from her. Red to me would be fire, white would be the purity, black could be the earth because she is a hearth goddess. So they do tie into her. And I don't know a ton about Bridget, but I do remember making the knots. And so when I'm looking through my book here, it is it talks about Bridget and stuff. So yeah, so she's the deity that would be, I don't know, looking for, or people would maybe tune into when they would do this type of season for them.
I remember reading somewhere that Bridget had a chariot of fire. Is that the same
Yes,
one?
same one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
she
she's also
had,
with the blacksmiths.
yes, absolutely. So
So
she's with the
forging fire
forges, and
again.
yeah,
Mhm.
again, all that having to do with fire, and how much of that blacksmithing was necessary for life,
Of
right?
course.
So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, normally on Imbolc, again, I kind of consider it a fire ceremony. I will light a fire as a reminder of things that are coming, kind of keeping the hearth warm, still knowing that we still have a little bit of hard time to get through. And fire, of course, was super important for peoples back in the day because that's their only source of
That's
warmth.
life. Yeah, by all means, that's
They didn't
life.
have fire, they froze.
Yeah.
So they had to tend their fires. They had to make sure everything was there. And it was the waiting, basically, I'm kind of tired of being indoors. So it was also that waiting process.
With us, mom used to talk about it as the ceremony of the new fires. That's exactly what she used to call it.
That makes
And
sense.
and again, it comes back, like you said, to the fire. And when we
Yes.
celebrate fire, we've got so much. I mean, we're talking about a time that there wasn't electricity and you can just switch on the light, or you can just plug in the heat, right? You literally had to have
Yes.
kept a whole bunch of wood to last you through the whole winter.
Yep.
You had to, not only that, at least from myself, I was brought up with the understanding that the element of fire in itself is another, it's a power of God. It's the divine being, right? I mean, I don't want to put any definitions for anybody else, but it is sacred. I mean, with that, you say it all pretty much.
Yeah.
It gives you life. It can take away life, but it can also change your life, you know? So that, when you come to it, in this time, we have all these ceremonies. If you look at the Jewish people, they do the menorah, right?
Yep.
They have the story that this light lasted for 8 nights, and that's the miracle behind it, right?
Right.
You have, and you look at if you look at any religion nowadays, you will find the similarities of it. Even in Christianity is the return of the sun, literally the sun, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so when you look at it, this really is a time of returning of light, of kind of burning, and the time of new things, because not only are we burning away the wood from last year, but we're also bringing into fold the food of next year, this year coming up. You know, we're getting to the point where we can go out and hunt and get our food, and we're not going to eat just dry stuff. We'll have fresh stuff too. You know what I mean? So new life again.
New life again. Also getting ready to, either start having animals giving birth, also starting families. Beltane was the holiday so Beltane is in May Day, Maypole.
Right, May Day.
So May Day was kind of the time where the peoples would get back together. That's when they kind of procreated. That was their busy season.
I read about those ceremonies.
Right. Because a lot of times they lived separate. And so, but 9 months later, you're starting to look at this time of year. There's trying to say that it's, now you're starting to birth. There's birthings happening for early spring when food is good. There was a reason why May was the month. And of course, it ties into all our weddings and things that we do now, May, June. Because 9 months later,
I read somewhere that in May is when it was warm enough to take a cold bath, and that's why you got married during that time, because you could actually take a bath.
December, January, February. It was also then the closest time to spring when food starts becoming more available, that you start having babies. You'd see them in February, March, kind of a cold time to have them, but also too, it's when you are guaranteed food again. Food was coming back in again. You're getting ready to set up your farms. What are you going to plant? Your animals are starting to come back. Everything is starting to get ready to birth. So Imbolc was a very important holiday because that was their big survival holiday. That was the last push they needed to do to ensure that they all survived.
Absolutely.
Timing for kids, timing for everything. And so it was preparation. It was the beginnings of thinking about how are we going to make it. Now the animals are starting to provide for us. So now it's time to put our crops in. And so they're watching the sun, they're watching the movements of everything, waiting for the weather to warm up for them so that they ensure that they're going to have a good harvest and good food.
Well, one of the things that I find really important is
interesting, and I'm like, so
I'm sorry.
But yeah, they do,
one of the things
everything
that
is guided by proper timing, because if you do things wrong at the wrong time, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
But
you're
I did
fine.
want to say that, what I find really interesting is that it depends on the perspective of the people and what part of the world those people live in that gives you your new year. Because anywhere from December all the way up to March or May, even, that you can
Sometimes.
have a celebration of New Year. But it
Yeah,
really depends on the cultural background it's coming from.
correct. So for Wiccans, pagans, our actual New Year is Halloween,
Yeah.
Samhain.
Yes, I've heard that
That's our
from
New Year. So
witches.
our New
Yeah.
Year starts then. Other things there is, and then for other cultures or other times, New Year's starts with a certain new moon. It's very lunar oriented. Also, if you do astrologically, technically Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. So March
Okay.
20th, March 21st, depending on how that falls each year, that's astrological New Year. So because that's how they read the zodiac, that's where it starts. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So the New Year's do move depending on your culture, what they believe. It is not always based on what they want to do as far as what a calendar tells them.
Correct.
The calendar is not right. It doesn't, I mean, it's a forced holiday, but it is just trouble, it's just different. And so it's a worldwide January 1st, but for pretty much everyone in the world, their cultural beliefs, their religious beliefs, whatever wording you like, that was not the official timing
Yeah,
of
no,
year.
you're talking about, this is the imposition of the I think it's called the Gregorian
Yep.
calendar or something like
Yep.
that. And that is really an agreement among Westerners that have been imposed onto the rest of the world. But when it comes on to it, right now, anything that is business that is considered of a civilized society runs
Right.
on this calendar. So yeah, you see all these folks celebrating on January 1st, but then those of us who follow different ceremonial or cultural practices, we have all these different dates. Because I know for myself, we've had New Year's on different parts at different parts of the times of the year. You know what I
Right.
mean? Where it's not really a new year, but it is a changeover. So it's not really so much about how many years it's been, but how things have changed, what changes are happening at this point in time. Like you said, I think it's that separation from the calendar into something that is more of what does the population need at that moment.
But it was a definite departure and a definite move, and it took you out of the rhythm of cycles. It definitely took you out of being in tune with nature more, especially, once you started moving into cities and away from farming, you lost a lot of following the cyclical things,
Correct.
seasons, watching the sun change, watching the phases of the moon, how things are varied, that kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
I
And
know.
with those changes, I mean, changes come along in the ceremonies as well. you know um with us, we may not be able to make a huge fire, but at least we can light a candle. You know what I
Correct.
mean? I've lived in places where we couldn't really spend the evening drumming and singing
Mhm.
because we lived too close to other people, but we could always share in song and dance, among ourselves, a little
Correct.
lower. So it's also the adaptation of ourselves,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
comes back to, also us connecting to us and how we would like to celebrate this new feeling. you know i like I like going out to the garden, right? And I like
Mhm.
starting to plant my plants and doing my little seedlings inside and stuff like that, getting ready for the spring.
Right.
So that can become a ritual, that can become
Absolutely.
ritualized you
Absolutely.
know
Absolutely. I mean, you can certainly create yourself any type of altar, any type of little space, and light a candle and be like, this is because I'm ready for the change of season. It's also about getting ready, like you said, for planting. So a lot of people start doing their indoor gardenings now, getting their little greenhouses, their little stuff. I don't garden because I kill everything, but it's out there.
yeah
And then but you can always create the things that remind you of regeneration and rebirth. You can always add those to your altar. You can always add little things like that. You could bring in some stuff from outside. You can go to the garden center, just buy a nice little plant to put on your altar.
Exactly.
You know, you could bring in seeds and go, these are what I want to bless, that I want to plant in the next week or 2 or month. And so
actually,
you can,
that could become even a ritual where you can plant a seed of something that you want, and then you go ahead and keep on giving energy. But as you're giving it energy, you're giving energy to your dreams, you know, to your reality, to what you want to create.
Correct. And so it's kind of a nice way to start things. And you can do kind of anything that you want. There's no right or wrongs. It kind of think about what's important to you. What do you enjoy about spring? I like chocolate, so you know, it is Easter time, and Peeps. So, but what does it mean to you? How does your life want to follow that cycle? There really is no wrong way to do things. We've always did a group community. We would do a potluck.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we would do a circle with all of that, and our little ceremony about the stone soup. But it's the community. And even if you don't necessarily have community, you can create what you want at home. But we had no wrong way of doing it. We always did, you know, we made, like I said, the Bridget knots. So we made those just so that we as a group shared an activity. We had something to take home with us.
I understand that as a way of creating the sacred together.
Exactly.
And you know what? That is a really beautiful way. And, you know, we can create the sacred alone because some of us also live alone. And with that said, I know that you have a class coming up with creating sacred spaces. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's when I do my altar work, when most people do any type of ceremony, we all create a space. And a lot of people kind of just sit down maybe to meditate that day, and they don't think about their space. And so it'll kind of be talking about ways other people create space, ways things are being done. Also, why you would want to create a protective circle, why you would want to do those sort of things. And thinking about keeping yourself with a place that, how do I want to say it? A place where you are safe, a place where you are protected, a place where you can call in your God or goddess or deity or higher self to come in and commune with you. And the more that you keep creating this sacred area, the easier it becomes. It becomes a natural feeling space. And when you also sit in there, you're relegating that space to something more sacred. It's not like I'm just going to go sit on my couch and I'm going to go meditate because, you know, I need a new job this week. You're doing repetition. You're creating.
God, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so then
you are creating the sacred space. It, you know, the work comes from doing the work. It really does. And I can understand what you're talking about. And it's funny because tomorrow I have a class that's really not related to that, but I can hear a lot of what you say that is the same in it. I'm going to be talking about shamanic journey, right? Shamanic journey. And you know, part of that is creating a circle. Part of that is, I mean, the way I'm going to teach it is a way that my mother taught me. And my mother taught me about just exactly what you're saying. You got to do the practice on a regular basis and go to your circle. And this circle is your safe space, and you can envision it as you see it. So, you know, it's, you know, I find it so exciting when we connect so many different, you know, it's almost
they
like
all stem from the same place. They're just different words or different habits or different ways of approaching the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's just a different interpretation. It's like
having the same doll but dressed in different outfits. It really is, you know. At least that's the way I envision it at times.
Yes, but it's so true. And the more that you can keep your sacred space, it just feels natural. You walk into it, you know. Your animals become sensitive to it. What was really funny was when I would do ritual in my living room, I had a little sunroom in one of my homes along the way because I live in a lot of houses. But whenever I would create my sacred space, my cat would not cross it. I was just like,
Oh, really?
yeah. And she would literally walk the edge of that circle that I drew in my home, that I created in my home when I did my rituals, when I did my holidays, my celebrations or petitions, whatever I was doing that day. But she never crossed the boundary of that. And she would literally walk around the outside of it. So your energy becomes physical.
Absolutely.
And it gets embedded in that space. And then when you go to go do your work, you've already started seeding that space. It stays there. And so that's part of creating a space like that, you know. And then also too, there's the directions. We all have them. So we'll also explore a little bit about what's in each direction. Different colors, different elements. And then of course, hello, I do shaman journey too. Who lives in those quarters? Like when you go journey, who do you meet when you go out there?
Correct.
So it's kind of fun, you know.
It is absolutely fun. Girl, you're talking my language.
I know, I'm gonna try and come tomorrow, by the way. So
I hope so. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I could use one. And you know, so it'd be good to do a group journey and that kind of stuff. So we'll do kind of similar
Just
too.
sitting back and letting somebody else, you know, make the space so that you can join. Absolutely. No.
Yes. No, it's gonna be fun. Way fun. So I know. I like it.
I'd like to thank you two. You guys are just awesome. And hopefully by tomorrow, I'll be able to talk a little bit more and participate. So I'm really looking forward to that. Lisa's made a lot of comments today. She's going to be there tomorrow. And I hope everybody enjoyed this class. It's actually not a class. It's just a free coffee and tea event, you know, Nanu swings your coffee. And if anybody else wants to have some tea, go for it. If not, whatever is your liking. I'm going to stop recording, and this recording will be available for free on YouTube. So thank you, everybody, and everybody else.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
This was fascinating. It's like so many of these things are just so exciting. I can't wait.
You are so welcome.
So I'm still recording.
Nanu.
I just want to say thank you. I'm going to stop recording, and then you guys that are on the call, stay on the call if you have any questions. I'm going to pause.